What up, fight fans? It is the Iman Report, your UFC on ESPN 12 post-fight show for Saturday night, June 27th, 2020. Tonight was mostly it was an okay fight card, but they saved the best for last tonight as Dustin Diamond Poirier beats Daniel Hooker by unanimous decision 48-47, 48-47, 48-46. So Dustin Poirier, your winner tonight. And this one was a banger. This fight could have gone either way. So no debate here, no robbery. This one, like I said, this one was, they saved the best fight for last tonight. The rest of the fight cards tonight were kind of lackluster to me. So out of a scale of 1 to 10, I give tonight's fight card a 5. But Poirier now right back in the title hunt, gets a win, gets his first win after losing to Khabib Nurmagomedov. And this is, no, okay, not his first loss, but only Daniel Hooker's second loss at 155. So Hooker has really become a much better fighter ever since going to 155. And Daniel Hooker had a valiant effort was all game in this losing fight, in a losing effort. So he's proved himself. He is a top 5 fighter at the lightweight. No shame in losing to Dustin Poirier. As for Poirier, he's lost to Khabib. So right now, I don't know if there's any chance of him getting any. He needs to hope for a Gaethje victory in order to get a rematch. And Poirier does have a win over Gaethje at 155, so he needs to hope for a Gaethje victory when Gaethje fights Khabib. But, could Dustin Poirier possibly seek a rematch with Conor McGregor? Unfortunately, the last time Poirier fought McGregor, it was way back in 2014. He lost to Conor McGregor at UFC 178. So, and it was a first round knockout. In hindsight, though, Poirier has become a much better fighter now than he did previously when he fought Conor McGregor. And Poirier is a much better fighter at 155. So, you know what? But the reason why I doubt we will see Poirier versus McGregor too, they are angling to set up the winner. They're likely wanting to set up the winner of Khabib and Gaethje. The winner of that fight is likely getting Conor McGregor. That's what Dana White wants. Dana White wants the money. And Conor McGregor is the cash cow. So what the cash cow wants, the cash cow gets. The moolah at 150. So I think, so that's the bad news for Poirier. I just don't see him getting Conor McGregor right now. But for Poirier, we see though who else is. But he could get another top 10 fighter. But he's just got to hope maybe that. I think Poirier's best hope is for some way, somehow, for Justin Gaethje to somehow take the belt away from Khabib this fall. That is really Poirier's only path to the belt. And even at that, Conor is very likely the next in line for the 155 belt. That's just how Dana White operates, unfortunately. But there could be some other good up-and-coming fighters for Dustin Poirier to fight next. I'm going to try to take a look at the rankings here. Also, one option. Well, I think this option, Diego Ferreira would not be a bad. Diego Ferreira could be next for Dustin Poirier. Ferreira is on a tear at 155. You could put him up against either Diego Ferreira or Charles Oliveira, who's finally starting to find himself at 155. So I think Charles Oliveira may be what, unfortunately, is the most realistic next matchup for Poirier, as I just don't see him getting him. The win doesn't get him, unfortunately, any closer to a title shot, or he's unlikely to probably get Conor McGregor anytime soon. So sadly, I think it's Charles Oliveira for Dustin Poirier. As for Dan Hooker, no shame in losing a close fight to Dustin Poirier. Tonight, he has cemented his spot as a top 5 fighter in the lightweight division. So I think he gets rewarded in a losing effort. I think what a good next matchup for Dan Hooker would be. Give me Tony El Kukui Ferguson versus Dan Hooker on a fight night card. That could be another banger, another fight of the night right there. Certainly, Poirier and Hooker, they're both going to get their wallets filled from this fight. Fight of the night, definitely 50 G's. So I think certainly they're going to get 50 G's for that fight. But for Hooker, I like the loser versus loser formula. And what does Ferguson do after losing to Gaethje? I think this is probably a good maybe step backwards. You could also you can even conceivably put Ferguson versus. I might actually go with that. I think maybe Poirier versus Ferguson's what we go. This is a good. What did you learn from losing? So yeah, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna reverse my direction on this for one of the few times I do this. But yeah, I normally don't. But yeah, this is a title loss. So I don't mind that. So Ferguson versus Poirier. That's what I'm gonna go with. Tony Ferguson versus Daniel Poirier, Dustin Poirier. That's another mouthwatering fight to top a fight night card. But for Daniel Hooker, he should not fall too far off the pace. Maybe give him Charles Oliveira. I think Hooker versus Oliveira or Ferreira. That would be another good headliner card. Hooker has really grown from the fighter I've seen years ago, who was a gatekeeper for the longest time. But Hooker has grown as a fighter. He has earned his spot in the top 5. So I do think, unfortunately, he's going to have to take a little bit of a step back, but I think Charles Oliveira is another one that's knocking on the top 5. I wouldn't mind seeing Oliveira versus Hooker. That would be a good main event card there. On to the co-main event. This was one where Mike Perry gets back in the win column after beating Mickey Gall by unanimous decision. And for Mike Perry, for him, that is his first. He snaps a 2-fight losing streak. The bad part is he's 2-3 in his last 5 fights. But this was a nice step down for for Mike Perry. Didn't really even have a camp. He was using his family. No camp, no coaches. He still goes out and gets the W, gets business done against Mickey Gall. But does he deserve another top 15 fighter? No. No, Mickey Gall honestly is not that good of a fighter. I'll get to shit talking on him in a moment. But I think for Perry, I maybe Lawler. I would not mind him maybe fighting a guy like Robbie Lawler. Lawler's better days are done. I think maybe this could, if Perry wants that fight, yeah, I wouldn't totally be opposed to seeing that fight. But I really do not want to see Perry up against the actual contenders of the top 15. I kind of see Mike Perry as more of a gatekeeper at welterweight. I don't think he's an actual contender. He has a ceiling, but he is a good gatekeeper, an exciting fighter, but I don't think he's ever going to fight for a title. And this was a good win to get Perry back in the win column. Hopefully Dana White can pay the man. I certainly would love to see a fighters union at this point. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to do a little shit talk on Dana White here. If there's one thing the UFC needs to do, they need to pay their fighters. And they don't pay their fighters well. I am actually in support of UFC fighters unionizing. They need to start paying these fighters what they're worth, or they're going to start losing a lot of these fighters to Bellator at this rate. So pay Mike Perry, please. That's how it's. Perry's never going to be he's an entertaining fighter. He'll never fight for a title. But let me see what I think should be. But yeah, I'm okay with the idea of going with Robbie Lawler versus Mike Perry. That should be next for him. As for, here we go, the shit talk on Mickey Gall. Honestly, is Mickey Gall even a UFC fighter? I don't know. I don't think he is a good fighter at 170. I think he needs to consider talking to a nutritionist. He actually flamed out after the first round. Gall showed some flashes, so I'll give him that. But I don't ever think Mickey Gall is going to ever be a contender at 170. When your best win is over, yeah, he has multiple wins, but when your best win is over CM Punk, but the win, okay, Marvel DC, here's where I'm going to go with. I don't like, when we take a look at Mickey Gall, his wins at this point. Mickey Gall has wins over Salim Tuhari, not in the UFC anymore. George Sullivan, not in the UFC anymore. Sage Northcutt flamed out over there at ONE FC. And then CM Punk. But that's your best wins. That's not good. Mickey Gall does not have the greatest fight IQ. I really don't think 170 is the best place for Mickey Gall. I think he may need to maybe get together with a nutritionist and drop to 155. I think Gall might be better at 155. He actually showed some chin tonight, but he does not have much of a gas tank. As for Gall's losses besides Perry, he got knocked out by an aging Diego Sanchez. That's not good. He lost unanimous decision to Randy Rude Boy Brown, and Randy Brown is actually starting to look like a contender in the welterweight division. But honestly, like I said, I just don't know what Mickey Gall has, and I think he needs to really consider 155. Maybe his next fight should maybe rebook him with Carlos Condit. But I just don't ever see him really being a contender at 170. And I don't know. I'm that back and forth with, I'm just not sold on Mickey Gall. So I don't think he's that great of a fighter. In the fight before that, Maurice Green submits Gian Villante by submission in the third round by arm triangle choke. As for who's Maurice Green looked okay. Still got some work to do at heavyweights, where you are starting to see, and heavyweights getting a little bit better with the prospect pool. There are some more prospects coming along. But for Maurice Green, he put up a good fight. Who I think should be next for Maurice Green? I'm going to take a look at where he's ranked. According to Fight Matrix, he's ranked 58. And he did lose to Alexei Olenek. But Green did enough. Thank you, Marvel DC, on that. Yeah, Green did enough on get the win, but I don't think he's ready for big names just yet. Maybe put him up against the winner of Gagne and Pavlovich would not be a... Gagne, Cyril Gagne, Sergey Pavlovich, maybe the winner of that fight should be next for Green. Or here we go, this might even be better. Carlos Felipe, the winner of Sergey Spivak versus Carlos Felipe. That's what I'm going to go with for who should be next for Maurice Green. As for Gian Villante, he actually did not look too terribly bad at heavyweight. I think he's got maybe a little bit of a future at heavyweight. He's got the tank for heavyweight. But I think I honestly though, I think I will say he needs to hang around at heavyweight. Villante didn't look too terribly bad. Especially since he's at the twilight of his career. But as for who should be next for him, maybe the loser of Justin Tafa and Rafael Pessoa should be who's next for Gian Villante. And then fight before that at middleweight, Brandon Allen beats Kyle Daukaus by unanimous decision. Brandon Allen is really starting to look like he could possibly be a top 15 contender at middleweight. I think what's next for Brendan Allen, you simply rebook him against Ian Heinisch. That was the original fight. I'd just say go ahead and rebook that. I'm okay with that. As for Daukaus, probably just give him a debutante next. In the fight before that at welterweight, Takashi Sato beats Jason Witt by TKO in the first round. Sato gets back in the win column tonight. As for who should be next for Takashi Sato, I say Diego Lima. I'd give him an experienced fighter in Diego Lima. That's who should be next for Takashi Sato. That's a bit of a step up, but not a big step up. So I'll go with Sato versus Lima there. As for Jason Witt, a debutante, Witt coming in on short notice. So that's what should be next. And Sato could get knockout of the night. That's probably going to get him 50 G's in that fight. And on the first fight on the main card on ESPN, Julian Erosa submits Sean Woodson by a Darce choke in the third round. Erosa really starting to look like he could be a contender at 145. And this was at 150 pounds. Erosa getting the win on short notice. Question is Erosa, I'd like to maybe see Erosa maybe get a more experienced fighter next. See how he would handle the ranks of veterans. Oh, wait a minute. He was. Never mind. Never mind. Strike that one. Erosa's record is not good at 140. Not good in the UFC. But I do think he'll get another fight in the UFC. Probably Steven Peterson. I'll go with Julian Erosa versus Steven Peterson should be next. Sean Woodson gets a debutante next. I think that was his UFC debut. Check. See, I think that's Woodson's debut in the UFC. No, okay. He had a fight last year against Kyle Bochniak. I don't know if he's going to stay at 145 or go back to 155. But I think probably a debutante is what's likely next for Woodson. In the prelim card, in a good last fight of the prelim card, Karma Worthy submits the violent Bob Ross, Luis Pena by guillotine in the third round. That was a very exciting back and forth fight. Karma Worthy 2-0 in the UFC. And I think it's time to start paying attention to Karma Worthy. This guy wiped out a couple of this guy has wiped out a couple of good prospects in the UFC. So it's time. Yeah, he beat Devontae Smith, and now he submits Luis Pena. I certainly think now Worthy is worthy of a step up. No, I think maybe Omar Antonio Morales Ferrer should be next for Karma Worthy. As for Luis Pena, Yes, he did lose tonight, but he did show some improvement tonight. So I do think he gets rewarded up a little bit in the losing effort. He actually looked pretty good grappling. He actually showed some of his grappling skills tonight. So Luis Pena, this is not the worst loss for him. He's now 8-3 in the UFC. And I think that 1-2 in the last three fights is a bit deceptive. But I think Luis Pena, maybe for Luis Pena, he looked better in this fight. He really gave Karma Worthy a really good fight. Just unfortunately got submitted at the end of the fight. So I do think maybe a slight step up in competition in a losing effort is what should be next for Luis Pena. Maybe the loser of Rafael Fiziev and Mark Diakiese should be next for Luis Pena. And in the fight before that at heavyweight, Tanner Boser knocks out Felipe Lins in the first round. Who's next for Tanner Boser? I think for Boser, who should be next, maybe Chase Sherman. Boser versus Sherman, undercard, book it. As for Felipe Lins, he falls to 0-2 after this fight. 0-2 usually means adios. And I think Lins, let me see how bad Felipe Lins, 0-2 in the UFC. Loses the first fight to Arlovsky by unanimous decision. Gets knocked out by Boser. So I think bye-bye. For that, Kay Hansen defeats Jinyu Fry by submission armbar. I think these were both debutantes. Hansen coming up from Hansen victorious in her UFC debut, coming from Invicta FC. As for who I think should be next for her, Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern, that's. As for Jinyu Fry, I think this was also her first fight in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, she was the former Invicta atomweight champion. Okay. And she makes her strawweight debut, loses. I think for Fry, a debutante should be next for her. In the first fight of the card of the night, Youssef Zalal beats Jordan Griffin by unanimous decision. All three judges had it 29-28. As for who should be next for Zalal, Seong Woo Choi, I think that sounds about right for Zalal. As for Jordan Griffin, he is now one. Okay, he is 1-3 in the UFC. His only wins against TJ Brown. Who should be next for Jordan Griffin? Could get a fighter somewhere near the cut list. I'll give him Derek Minner. Minner versus Griffin, and loser leaves town. That should be next. And that will conclude it for this fight for UFC on ESPN 12. Now the UFC will be off next week for 4th of July. Then it will be on to Fight Island the fall on July on 7-11 day. They will go to Fight Island, and that will be a banger of a fight card coming on July on 7-11. You've got Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns for the undisputed welterweight title. You've got Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 2 for the undisputed featherweight championship. And Peter Yan versus Jose Aldo for the vacant bantamweight championship. Other fights on the main card: Amanda Ribas versus Paige Van Zandt. Another exciting fight for the next fight to fight Yi Zhang. Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas. That's going to be fun. And then the rest of the undercard's not all that great, unfortunately. But we do have a stacked pay-per-view card coming on 7-11. The Ironman report will be on after that pay-per-view card. So that's going to be very fun and exciting there. And now, just everybody, please have a safe 4th of July. Just kidding. I think one thing I want to discuss is, with COVID-19, hopefully we don't see any fighters test positive for COVID-19 going to Fight Island. So hopefully luckily they're not in Florida. I'm really starting to get concerned with the NBA and MLS holding their bubbles in Orlando. Florida today had over 9,000 new cases of COVID-19. Florida has become probably the epicenter. Miami's starting to reclose beaches in Florida, reclosing bars. I think for the NBA and Major League Soccer, MLS, they definitely should consider delaying a restart until they find another venue. NBA, I think it's time to consider going to New York City at this point. I think Florida needs to go into a second stay-at-home order. I've been trying to be really resistant on the idea of a second stay-at-home order with the quarantine fatigue and stuff with people. But with the cases getting as bad as they are in Florida, I don't think there's any way Florida can avoid another stay-at-home order. So I think for NBA, it's time to start looking at New York, potentially New York as a spot for relocation for the bubble. Soccer, same situation. They need to figure somewhere else to play sports. Cases continuing to, well, it's not getting as bad in Texas now. I think Texas is last 3 days. So Texas's spike, hopefully it's starting to plateau in Texas. Governor Abbott's starting to roll back on restrictions over there. That's kind of good. Arizona, they've had a spike last a few days. The numbers are starting to plateau there. So hopefully these mask orders will help, but the hospitalizations are not great in those 3 states. Certainly the ICUs are near full. That worries me, though. As I said, hopefully we hear word. I wouldn't be surprised, though, in the coming days we hear NBA and MLS getting out of Florida. I am happy that UFC is not in Florida anymore. But Vegas, even Las Vegas, cases are spiking in Nevada. So I think we're starting to get the numbers back from the people who've been out protesting for Black Lives Matter. And they do matter. If Black Lives matter to you, cover yourself with a mask. Save a black life by wearing a mask. But, in the same breath, I could say, I could shame the people who've been out there protesting, but nah. First Amendment rights, Black lives do matter. Hopefully we start seeing some good change in the police on that front. Hopefully Fight Island goes off with a bang and without any issues as in terms of COVID-19 over in Abu Dhabi. Everybody enjoy your 4th of July. Just please do it safely. If you're going to go out and light fireworks this year, please wear a mask. Please wear a mask for 4th of July. There is a good chance that COVID's probably going to increase, and even fireworks smoke can increase those chances of you getting COVID-19. So please cover yourself for 4th of July. If you're going to light off fireworks, wear a mask, save a life. Happy 4th. God bless America. We'll get back on there if we hear any imminent announcements. Hopefully, spring training this week goes without any major news of players testing positive. But I think though the leagues are expecting players to test positive as we are getting closer to a restart. So everybody stay safe. Happy 4th. Wear the mask. Good night.